What's up, guys? Thank you so much for hanging out with me today. I hope that you all are doing great. I am YoYoY2K, back again with another Cyberpunk 2077 video. Today, I'm going to play around with the photo mode, so I hope that you guys enjoy, and hopefully I can teach you guys something you didn't know about photo mode. I've been playing around with it a lot recently, and it's a ton of fun. So without further ado, let's go ahead and take a photo of this wonderful game. I will begin by saying that I play on PC, so my controls are a little bit different from you guys that have console. That being said, I believe to enter photo mode on console, you would click down on both joysticks simultaneously, and then that would take you into your photo mode. But on computer, what I do is hit N, as in noodles, on the keyboard. So if I hit N, I am now in photo mode, and I can take my mouse and adjust the camera until I have kind of the framing, kind of the picture that I like. So if I hold the left mouse button, I can drag the camera left, right, up, and down just by moving the mouse. So the camera goes the direction that you move the mouse. If I move the mouse right, it goes to the right. And if I hold the right mouse button, I can swivel the camera around like so. So let's go ahead, find a pretty cool angle and set the camera to take a picture. You can also use WASD to move the camera as well. W goes forward, S goes back, D goes right, and A goes left, as you might expect. So let's go ahead, just kind of get a somewhat decent framing here for the picture. I think maybe something along those lines is kind of cool. So I'm going to leave it right there. Move the mouse so my character is kind of in the center of the camera, and then we can play around with the presets, field of view, and rotate the camera. So the presets, we can cycle through different preset options that the game has, eventually coming back to our custom setting where we began. And then field of view is just going to make the picture bigger or smaller depending on if you go up or down in your field of view. I'm going to say maybe something 44 looks good for this picture. And then rotate is just going to rotate your camera. So if you go negative, you will rotate it to the left. And if you go positive, it rotates to the right. So maybe something along those lines is kind of cool for this picture. And then to tab to the next section or the next tab on the photo mode editor, if I hit E, I can go to depth of field. And if I hit Q, I can go back to camera. So depth of field just allows us to kind of focus on a specific location, on a character, or something behind our character. So if I go and disable the depth of field, then everything in frame becomes in focus. And if I enable it again, then wherever I have focused is where, it will be clear, and then everything that is not focused will be blurry. Basically, is all you need to know for that. Autofocus, just as the name suggests, it automatically focuses on your point at this, maybe the character in this case. So if I turn on the autofocus or turn it off, then I can actually change my focus distance, and I can focus. Right now, it's actually focused on the truck behind my character, but if I move down, see how the character comes in and out of focus. So we'll go ahead and focus up until the character is in focus. Something like that looks okay. And then with the aperture, if I go up in aperture all the way to the max of 16, it's kind of like turning off the depth of field. Everything's in focus again. And then if I go down, I think 1.2 is the lowest you can have. So 1.2, everything outside of my focal distance is completely blurred. So I'm going to set it at maybe 2. Something like that. Makes it look a little bit more dramatic in my mind. And then we're going to tab over with E to the effects. And here we can mess around with exposure, contrast, highlights, etc. So if I increase the exposure, it becomes really bright. And if I decrease the exposure, it gets darker and darker and darker. So I will go ahead, maybe put the exposure, let's actually go a little bit darker. How about exposure around -12? Contrast, if I increase the contrast, in this case it's going to become darker, and if I decrease it, then it's going to become washed out. So let's go ahead Put a little bit of contrast in, but not too much. So maybe somewhere around, I think that looks okay, about an 18 for this photo. Highlights is going to make your brights brighter, and if I adjust that up, you can see that the brightness, like the glares and everything, are becoming much brighter. And then if I decrease it, the whole photo becomes darker, almost like if I had increased the contrast. So I think for highlights, I'm going to put it up maybe just around 6 or so for this photo. Vignette is where we can add kind of a black blur around the edges of the frame. If I increase the vignette, then we get dark edges. I'm personally not a big fan of vignettes, so I'm going to leave that off. Chromatic aberration I actually have turned off on my computer, so it's not going to do anything. So I'm not actually sure what chromatic aberration does. I do know that for the most part, it makes your game run worse. So I have it turned off, and if I increase it and decrease it, it's not doing anything. So I have chromatic aberration turned off, but you can play around with that and see if it affects your picture or not. And then grain is just going to give us a film grain. Again, I'm not a huge fan of film grain, so I'm going to completely turn that off. And then effect is where we can cycle through a number of presets that have some pretty cool effects, actually. There are some pretty cool ones in here that are kind of interesting and pretty artistic. This is probably my favorite one. It just makes everything a little bit more saturated. I'm a big fan of that. Now, if I cycle through, we go with yellow, blue, cycle white. So you can definitely have some fun with this and make some pretty cool pictures depending on, what kind of impression you're going for. And if I tab over using E to stickers, stickers are where we can add stickers to the picture. So if I cycle through the pictures, we can add pictures to, add stickers to the picture. I'm going to cycle through, I think 70 or 71 is the Cyberpunk 2077 logo. So I'll cycle to that and add that. There it is. I'll add this to our photo. If I move the mouse around, you'll notice it becomes kind of transparent, or more transparent, as I hover over it. If I left click, I can drag. So if I left click and hold, I guess I should say, I can drag the sticker around. If I were to right click and hold, I can adjust the size. I can swivel it around, make it all kinds of different angles. So maybe something along those lines. Actually, how about right there? And then I'm going to drag that. Actually, I think maybe right there is okay. And there's actually there's some different Cyberpunk logos. And you know what? I think the original is fine. Let's go with that Cyberpunk logo. And I'm just going to leave it right there for this photo. And then I'll add one more just for the sake of, this little video tutorial guide, whatever you want to call it. Let's just try to find something that isn't too obtrusive. It kind of goes with the rest of the picture, kind of the theme or the feel that I've got going on so far. Maybe something along the lines of, how about that? That's not too bad. So again, if I hover over the new picture, it becomes a little more translucent, and I can left click and drag. I can put it down there if I wanted to. And if I right click, I can adjust its size and its its angle, the way it's kind of going off left or right. So I think that looks okay. I'm gonna drag it right there, just leave it. That looks decent. I think two stickers for this photo is fine. And I'm gonna go down to frame and cycle through all the frames for you guys. As the name might suggest, frames are just the different preset frames that Cyberpunk has in the game, and there are actually quite a few, and there's a lot of them that are really cool. So definitely a loss of opportunities to make some really cool screenshots, really cool photos. I'm a big fan of this one, especially for portraits. I think that looks pretty sweet. So if I just cycle through here, you can see there are quite a few. think I'll come back and use this one for this particular photo. But let's go ahead and go to the end of the frames. So just depending on the feel you're going for, there should be a frame for you, and it really helps to actually give your photo a different kind of feel. So let's go back to the one that I said I thought we would use, which is this one. And I need to adjust the Cyberpunk logo a little bit. I'm going to right click with my mouse, hold right mouse button, and kind of make it a little bit smaller and kind of reposition it so that it's more in the actual photo and not off on the black edges. And then I also need to adjust this. I'll right click, make that smaller as well, and then just make it kind of go the same direction, kind of parallel with Cyberpunk, the actual game logo, and put it maybe right there. And that is pretty much it, aside from loading and saving a preset. So if I tab over to load save, this is where you can load and save a preset. So if I were to hold down on the backspace on the keyboard, it would load that particular setting that I have in slot 1. If I were to hold enter, then it would actually save this photo that I've got going on here. So if you wanted to come back to these, the frame and your effect, focal distance, that kind of stuff, you can save it and come back to it easily in the future. The last thing to do is to take a photo. So if you hit tab on the keyboard, it gets rid of the UI where you have just the picture, and don't worry, the mouse cursor disappears when you take a screenshot. And to finally take your screenshot, you hit the space bar. And there we have taken a screenshot in Cyberpunk 2077. I hope this has been helpful to you guys. Let me know down in the comment section if this was helpful. Let me know if you guys have taken some pretty cool screenshots. And most importantly, have fun playing the game, guys. It's been a lot of fun playing this game. So hopefully you can learn something from this guide. And that's it. Hope you had a great time. Enjoy the rest of your day and or night wherever you are. And hopefully I will see you all again in the next video. Until then, take care and bye-bye.